representing Africans? No, right? And that's where it gets kind of muddy, right? It is tricky. Like, whose interest should they keep in mind? You know, as you mentioned, they look rich and proper, so maybe they're very interested in their own interests. How can I benefit from this? And you know, the tricky part is, it's like, when you do something, how often do you consider other people before you make a decision? And we're all capable of being careless, so it gets tricky. Additionally, when we examine various cultural beliefs, do you think they even cared about the people they were taking over? Do you think that they thought those people were civilized, or cultured? Probably not, right? And naturally, so as they go into Africa, as they go in and try to take over these places, they run into problems, right? The people, they find that the people who live there already are they're going to resist. You know what I mean? Think about it this way, like, how do you feel if you have food at home waiting for you and you come home and one of your siblings ate it? Or somebody else, right? What did you say?
War.
War, right? So naturally, you know, if you come home and someone took your food, or took your stuff, you're going to feel pretty upset. Maybe you'll choose violence. Not that you should. But anyone with siblings has probably chosen violence at least once in their life. In grade 11, you learned more about the independence processes that occurred after World War I and II. It's not something really emphasized in this course. So the map on the left is Africa before colonization. Again, I'm not sure if there's a whole lot of information on all the various groups that were there and borders, but some are very clearly depicted. Whereas when you look to the map on the right, how they split it up after the Berlin Conference, you know, you're seeing a whole lot of red. That's British. A lot of blue, French. And, you know, they likely didn't care very much about the nuances and intricacies of the people that lived there, right? Like, even in the classroom, think about how, like, as students, do you like it when you get generalized as this side? Right? Because right now I could say this side of the class is talking, but who was talking there? Just that guy and that guy. I don't know, but like this side is chatting right now. Well, the middle row is kind of disruptive, right? It's not fun to be characterized in a group, right? You prefer to be seen as an individual. And maybe as an individual you're nestled within groups, right? But again, as these imperialist nations came in and took over, you know, they were more concerned. So like, the British here are more concerned about controlling the ports here, this access point. Anyone know what the Suez Canal is? Anyone heard of this? Right? You want to explain, or?
It's like a shipping route that goes kind of through Africa. Like I think it's man-made, right?
Yeah. That's the important note. So the Suez Canal is a shipping route. They essentially dug out all this earth in this area, so that people could take boats through the Mediterranean and into, I think this is the Red Sea, out into the Indian Ocean, rather than go all the way around, right? So they're very focused on control and how it benefits them financially, economically, rather than how do we properly take care of these people, as you mentioned, right? How do we represent their interests as well? Here's just an idea of the various resources that some people might be interested in that are available and exist in Africa, right? You're seeing a lot of petroleum, so oil products. You're seeing uranium as well, cobalt. Anyone know what we use cobalt for? Batteries, right? Especially, I believe, those big car batteries, the ones that they use in electric cars, they use cobalt. Let's see, what else? Gold, diamonds. Anyone see the movie Blood Diamond? One, two of us. Pretty good movie, right? But it depicts some of the struggles that these people go through, dealing with a lack of rule of law, a lack of order, and the challenges it puts onto the people there. But to wrap up, so to answer the question, why should you, why should you care? Like, why do we learn about this? Would anyone like to take a guess? Like, why do you think this is important or relevant? Or is it? So maybe you don't feel like it's relevant, and that's a perfectly legitimate answer as well. Would anyone like to share their thoughts? Someone be brave.
I just think it's not relevant.
You think it's not relevant?
Because it talks about the 1800s, 1600s, 1700s.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff that happened way back and not anything current today.
Mm-hmm. Do you know anyone alive right now who was alive back then?
No.
Oh, so that might maybe fuel your reason for thinking it's not relevant.
It's relevant, but it's also not in a sense, because it could potentially be relevant to like not do these things again, but in the same sense, it's kind of like out of the picture now, because Canada and all that has changed in a way that kind of looks down upon all this sort of stuff. So in a way it is, but it isn't relevant at the same time.
I like that. It's relevant to examine and consider, like, hey, are we doing this now? Are we repeating what we did in the past? Right? And some people, myself, would argue, some people, including myself, would argue that, we are repeating a lot of what we did in the past. It just looks different. But I can understand your frustrations that, hey, Mr. Quadge, this is irrelevant. Like, this is 200-300 years ago. Which is a perfectly fair statement to make and belief to have. I believe, the aim of your course is to help build bridges between, something that happened 200 years ago. So let's say the Berlin Conference and how they split up Africa. And your course would like to make a connection as to why that event 200 years ago still impacts people to this day. There are challenges to that belief system, to that approach, because a lot can happen 200 years ago. Another question that people like Thomas Sowell might ask, or I was reading a book, Guns, Germs, and Steel, is why did some places progress more than other places? Right? Because you got to consider, there's all these resources in North America and Africa and South America. How come when the Europeans showed up, they were able to so successfully conquer these groups? Let's say through war or disease. And it's a very complicated question to understand and ask.
They knew how to use the resources.
Some people might argue, yeah, they had better organization of resources, right? Why did the Industrial Revolution happen in Europe and not in Asia or, wherever else, in the Middle East, right? Some of the oldest civilizations on the planet are in the Middle East. Right? I think in your research project you might have come across that information, right? Like the Mesopotamian culture is thousands of years old. Egyptian cultures, right? Very old, right? Like, why aren't these places? Why weren't they more successful? Let's say, at least in the way that we measure success. So it is complicated, and I think that sometimes what's being taught is designed to make you arrive to a certain conclusion. Right? But I do think it's important to think for yourself on why your course might want you to learn this information, why it might emphasize and claim that this is important. Right? Because as many of you stated, you're probably more concerned about how much time there is between now and lunch, and what you're going to do for your 5-day weekend, and whatever you got going on between your siblings and parents and families. And so it is hard to really connect this kind of stuff. Do you have a question? Back there. I thought you had your hand up.
Oh no, I'm just scratching my forehead.
Scratching your forehead. You're thinking. Forehead's all red now. So I don't really have an answer to give to you. I would encourage you to think about it on your own, and develop your own ideas on that. But that wraps up this chapter.